The old adage from Thomas Mann that everything is political has never stopped being relevant, and it applies to Frieren just as much as it applies to everything else. I personally was a fan of the Frieren manga from before the anime even came out. Frieren managed to feel postmodern precisely because it refused to be postmodern, representing a return to the fantasy of Tolkien, to fairy tales and myths. It captured a style of fantasy that made people fall in love with fantasy in the first place. This made it feel like a comment on the state of the fantasy genre in general, post A Song of Ice and Fire. Crucially though, and it seems ridiculous now, when I read the manga, I didn't think that Frieren had the potential to be a popular anime. I thought that the story was too slow, too based on the human experience, with fights too few and far between to appeal to a mass international audience. Obviously, I was dead wrong. Now, this video isn't going to be a review of Frieren's objective quality. You can watch a dozen other video essays on Frieren for that. This is a great series, and anyone who says otherwise is being a contrarian, as far as I'm concerned, ignoring its very obvious strengths. What I'm going to focus on is the fascinating way that Frieren has been adopted into modern political discourse, and the merits and lack thereof of this adoption. I will stress before we start, this isn't going to be a video on demons. I consider 99% of the demon discourse you'll see online as utterly moronic, and most of it is being spread by people who haven't read or watched Frieren, or just haven't read or watched it closely enough. I will comment on the demons later on, as part of a broader discussion on the morality of this series, and the way that its morality is being interpreted. Most of this is going to focus on the way that traditional fantasy, Frieren included, has been weaponized by the right and the left wing in a way that I consider not only concerning, but inappropriate. There will be light spoilers for future manga arcs of Frieren in this video, so if you're an anime-only viewer, do bear that in mind. Hope you enjoy the video. You can't discuss the so-called politics of Frieren without also discussing the politics of the father of modern fantasy, who informed so much of Frieren's storytelling, Tolkien. The politics of Middle-earth, of The Lord of the Rings, of Tolkien himself, has been much discussed over the years. Really, the only legitimate source on this matter, in my opinion, has to come straight from the horse's mouth. In a letter to Tolkien's son Christopher, dated to 1943, he described his political views as follows. My political opinions lean more and more to anarchy, philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control, not whiskered men with bombs, or to unconstitutional monarchy. I would arrest anybody who uses the word state, in any sense other than the inanimate realm of England and its inhabitants, a thing that has neither power, rights nor mind, and after a chance of recantation, execute them if they remained obstinate. Political views can change, and it would be wrong to claim that these are an outright representation of Tolkien's views throughout his life. Nonetheless, I feel compelled to accept this as a reliable representation of his beliefs because of how much of these statements we see reflected in his work. Tolkien described himself as an anarchist in the sense that he rejected tyranny, or large government, or modernity in general. Look at his presentation of industrial Mordor compared to the Shire. Look at his presentation of centralised absolute power in Sauron, again compared to life in the Shire. The most helpful label to describe Tolkien's political beliefs, which I would argue are absolutely reflected in his work, would be to say that he was a traditionalist. Modernity is rejected, tradition embraced. Industry, destruction of the natural world, destruction of tradition, powerful government is rejected. Agriculture, natural harmony, agrarianism, protection of the natural world, weaker government is embraced. The reason this needs to be established is because so many of these views, I feel, are reflected in Frieren. In the absence of a political comment from the author of Frieren himself, Yamada Kanehito, we have to rely on drawing inference from the writing. This series rejects modernity as much as Lord of the Rings does. Look at its idealised presentation of the natural world. Look at its idealised presentation of rural agrarian life in the recent second season. Look at its negative presentation of the Empire in the most recent manga arc, a powerful central government whose design apes totalitarianism. The difficulty I feel is that the traditionalist anarchic political worldview that Frieren inherits from Tolkien can neither be outright categorised as right or left wing. This is the source of the current political discourse around the series, in my opinion. Tolkien, Frieren, and traditional fantasy advocate for a way of life, rather than a certain side of the political spectrum. Frieren's central message is to slow down, to appreciate, to live life on your own terms. It's about grief and regret, about neither living too in the moment nor too far in the future, about the value of human connection. One can see the way that Tolkien-esque traditionalism has been adapted for the modern day in Frieren. Contemporary Japan has never been further from the lifestyle embodied in Frieren, a rural, traditional, simple life. Modern life in Japan and in the West is dominated by commerce, by big government, and indeed by social isolation. This is why Frieren, despite being a work of traditionalist fantasy, appears to have struck such a chord, because its central message has never been more relevant. So to claim that Frieren or Tolkien is apolitical would be a disservice. Everything is political, whether the author intends it to be or not. Your work will be viewed through a political lens regardless of authorial intention. The problem arises in that the views of Frieren and indeed of Tolkien cannot wholly be categorized one way or the other, as wholly left-wing or wholly right-wing. And in this political vacuum, what can the left or the right do other than try and claim it for themselves? The reason I think why those of the political right seem so keen to adopt the work of Tolkien and Frieren as their own is because of its emphasis on tradition, and the incorrect assumption that traditionalist equals right-wing. This is a massive oversimplification. Traditionalist is not necessarily the antonym of progressive. Tolkien described himself as an anarchist, a view often seen as far left, and wholeheartedly rejected the far right and the fascists of his era. What I would argue appeals to the right about Tolkien and also Frieren is its sense of traditional morality in particular. The morality of these worlds is one of binary good and evil. In Lord of the Rings, the protagonists are good and Sauron is evil. In Frieren, the titular character, or Himmel for example, is good, and the demons are evil. In modern entertainment, there has been a shift away from what might be described as traditional morality. Just look at the presentation of good and evil in the original Star Wars trilogy, for example, compared to its presentation in the much maligned sequel trilogy. This shift has also been reflected in anime. Look at the presentation of the villains in Demon Slayer, for example, the most popular modern shonen. Not all of these demons are evil beyond reproach. Nezuko herself is a demon. There has been an acceptance of shades of grey in morality, of relativism, and whether appropriate or not, this has become accepted as a reflection of broadly progressive left-wing views. Just look at the presentation of orcs in the Rings of Power compared to the orcs in Tolkien's actual work. Just look at the presentation of demons in Demon Slayer compared to Frieren. They don't compute. A more balanced, grey perspective of morality is incompatible with the traditionalist fantasy of Tolkien and Frieren. Again, I'm not going to get sucked into a discussion of the demons in Frieren, because I think that 90% of the discourse you see concerning them online is brain-dead beyond belief. The demons in Frieren are obviously not intended to be an allegory for immigrants, or whatever minority you want to pick out of a hat. They are not Palestinians or Jews. They are demons. Anyone claiming otherwise is not reading the text. The demons in Frieren have much more in common with, for example, the Daleks in Doctor Who. Just as Daleks exist with the fundamental belief of their own racial superiority, the demons in Frieren exist with the fundamental predatory desire to eat human beings. They are animals, not people. That distinction is plain. Now, ironically, the Daleks in Doctor Who are intended to be allegorical, but the demons in Frieren, unless the author explicitly claims otherwise further down the line, are not. Just as Tolkien did not intend Sauron to be interpreted in an allegorical sense, believing his antagonist to be a representation of an evil will to dominate, the demons have a similar design. They, like Sauron, are an inherently evil will that needs to be destroyed, the will to prey on humans. As the Golden Land arc goes to painful lengths to portray, demons cannot escape their nature, no matter how supposedly curious or intelligent they may be. A demon will never not be a demon. While Frieren's demons cannot be claimed to be allegorical, they can be claimed to be a rejection of what I would describe as modernist morality, or in other words, a now pervasive sense of moral relativism. The demons in Frieren are a representation of traditionalist morality, they have more in common with a Catholic sense of good and evil, one that Tolkien evoked in his work. This series ascribes to the view that innate good and evil does exist, and that good has a duty to defeat evil, just like Tolkien did. This does not, however, make Frieren right or left wing. These readings lack nuance and indeed basic reading comprehension. It would be wrong to claim that Frieren is a totally apolitical series, because being traditionalist is still a political view. To portray morality in a certain way is still to make a moral comment, whether the author intended it to be this way or not. Those at the right wing that are trying to claim Frieren for themselves, however, need to be ignored. Those at the left who accept this false reading and claim that Frieren is a right-wing series also need to be ignored. It's an overly simplistic reading of the manga that, to be brutally honest, is just flat out stupid. Frieren was written to be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of political belief, because we are all caught in the same trappings of vacuous late-stage capitalist modernity, the same trappings of social isolation, of moral dissolution, of the contemporary epidemic of personal meaninglessness. This is what Frieren is reacting against. It calls for a change in your way of life, not in your politics. This is what its sense of traditionalism rejects. The same shared shit modern human experience. That isn't right or left wing. To claim Frieren is right or left is a betrayal of the text itself. Don't listen to the political grifters online. Read Frieren for what it is, and enjoy it for what it is, a work of traditionalist fantasy. Thank you for watching.